Hello, this is Keith George, and this is my discussion on tort liability and how it pertains to school districts and personnel. So in examining what tort liability is, a tort is going to be any action or civil wrongdoing that has the intent to be harmful in some way to the other individual, whether that be physical harm, whether that be mental or emotional harm, whether that be reputational harm, and so forth. So obviously, if there are physical or emotional damages incurred, liability charges are going to be more imminent. In examining the different types of tort cases, focusing in on intentional and negligent torts. Intentional torts are going to be any actions that have the intent of causing the harm, whether verbal or physical, to another individual. And you can see the list of actions that could be considered as intentional tort on the screen there. As far as negligent tort, this is going to be where we're looking at essentially how the staff or personnel or person had effect in a potential injury or emotional distress and so forth of another person. So in most cases, they're going to examine the standard of care. They're going to examine the breach of duty. They're going to examine the relationship or the connectedness of the plaintiff and the defendant, whether it was their actions that resulted in injury. They're going to examine if injury was incurred. So looking at the first case, I started with Evans and Oaks Mission Public School. This is a case in which a student is suing for an injury that occurred during a physical education class. This is a student that's a junior in high school who's an athlete who's already sustained shoulder injuries in the past and is taking a break from sports to try to let that heal to where he can come back the next year and hit sports again. Originally, the student was not enrolled in a physical education class, but then changed his mind, fully aware of his shoulder issues and the idea that this was a physical education class. The parents did have a note in at the nurse listing some restrictions for the student. However, they were fully aware of his enrollment into the physical education class. So in the end, the court sided with the school in this matter. Reactive measures, I think what the Oaks Mission Public School did is right in line with what I think is the right thing to do, and that's, again, identify that it was Evans who enrolled in the physical education class, requested to be unenrolled out of another class and put into a physical education class, knowing his own health situation. So I think that's key right there, is just identifying, yes, there was a doctor's note, but you were fully aware. You took you assumed the risk in enrolling yourself in this physical education class. But to be proactive, to possibly prevent a situation like this from occurring, sticking real specific to this case, I'd say that if there's any time that there's a doctor note restricting or providing suggesting additional care and so forth throughout the school day, that the school nurse make staff well aware, or staff that are directly involved with that student aware anyways, of those restrictions and supports to possibly prevent any liability issues later on. If a student who has certain restrictions already in place because of a doctor's note and they're requesting to enter into a physical education class, I might encourage them to refrain from enrolling in that class and wait until they're cleared by the doctor and so forth. And if they persist, then I'd make it fully aware that they are assuming the risk of risking their health, whether it be a shoulder injury or a concussion and so forth. Ethics, in this case, I don't think anybody did anything wrong. Yes, the staff was aware of some of the restrictions, or that he was allowing the shoulder to heal and so forth. But again, he took the initiative in enrolling in the class. I think it's going to be important to ensure that staff are aware of the certain restrictions, backgrounds, and information on students, as well as the standard of care to ensure that we are supportive of our students and providing a safe environment. Next, we've got Mosley versus Portland Public School District. Mosley is a student that during a lunch got in an altercation with another student. The other student pulled a knife, managed to stab and cut Mosley multiple times before this fight was broken up. Mosley incurred, obviously, lifetime scars from this instance, and she's suing the school for negligence, for lack of supervision, and so forth. In this case, the court ruled with the school, saying that they have supervision policies in place, and so forth. In reaction to an instance like this, I think it's going to be important to reflect on our lunchtime supervision. Do we have adequate supervision? Is there enough? Do we have enough to quickly react to situations that arise and stop them before they escalate too quickly? And then I'd also want to start considering some additional securities concerning the knife that was brought to school. Proactive, I didn't list more lunchtime supervision to, again, ensure that we can monitor students more effectively and prevent escalation of certain situations. And then be well aware of students who have prior backgrounds and being violent with other students. Ethics, I'd educate staff on the importance of being present in the hallways, classrooms, and other areas where supervision may be necessary. Again, here, the key thing is supervision. If we are not monitoring them, then we are going to be held accountable for things that occur that when we should be supervising them. And so I'd inform staff of the liability issues that may arise if an instance happens when students should have been supervised properly. Moving on to Johnson Johnson versus School District of Millard. This is a first grade student who was participating in London Bridge is Falling Down game and song during music class. He was being rattled between two other students' arms when their arms broke free. When he broke free of their arms, he fell into a bookshelf where he ended up the injury ended up requiring 50 stitches. So they were suing the school for negligence, for not caring for their student properly and allowing such a thing to happen. And in this case, the court did rule with the first grader and his parents. In reaction to this, I think through the process I'd be supportive of the teacher, and after all, it was an accident. She was allowing the students to get some energy out while teaching a song and the actions that go along with it and so forth. I'd request, just as the school did, consideration of the accuracy of the incident, considering the teacher statement does not quite align with what the plaintiff's statement is, nor does another witness's statement align with the plaintiff's statement. So I'd encourage the court to consider the weight of the teacher's statement versus the first grade student. Proactive, I'd remind staff to consider all factors involved in lesson plans and activities, including the amount of space available, the maturity of the students, whether you can properly manage them through this activity, and so forth. I'd ensure teachers are establishing effective expectations and enforcing them. And then as far as sets of professional ethics, I think, again, it's going to be important that I notify staff that whether incidents are intentional or unintentional, liability cases may arise, and that it is our duty to, and we are expected uh, to have a standard of care for these students. It's our duty to ensure their safety during the school day. So I review those things with the staff. Moving on to Flanagan versus Canton. This is a fifth grader who sustained severe injuries after participating in a PE class. During that class in particular, the class was rowdy. PE teacher got onto him multiple times, ended up stopping class a little early to lecture them on their misbehaviors. Sent the group on down to the locker room while remaining up in the gymnasium to speak with another student. While Flanagan and his peers were going down to the locker room, one pushed him in the back, causing him to fall into a bench and lockers, sustaining severe injuries that resulted in an emergency surgery. And the teacher was not present at that time because he was in the gymnasium. So the school was being sued for, again, lack of supervision in those areas, negligence. Reaction to this, I'd review policies for PE locker room supervision and expectations for students. In this case, I think the incident could have even happened with the teacher present. Would that have changed the lawsuit? Would they have sued had the teacher been in the room and this still occurred? The court did identify that the school is only responsible for or foreseeable injuries. And generally, this wouldn't have been a foreseeable injury. However, since the class had been rowdy, they identified that it was foreseeable. So, again, in this case, I'd be still supportive of my staff in dealing with this case. Proactive. Educate staff on the importance of being present in hallways, classrooms, in all areas that are requiring supervision, because again, it's our responsibility to ensure the safety of the students at all times, and that's going to be done through supervision and management. And ensure, again, teachers are establishing those policies, those expectations, those procedures in and outside of the classroom. As far as ethics, again, staff must be aware that whether incidents are intentional or unintentional, liability cases may arise. And then I also educate the staff again on what is expected in the standard of care, breach of duty, and what is going to happen if injuries were sustained. And last, we've got Frame versus Comics. Frame, who's an 8th grade student, causes a class disruption. The teacher is a certified teacher, but acting as a substitute in someone else's room at this time. Goes to confront the student. The student stands up to confront the teacher, and in that process, the teacher grabs the student's arm while he's standing up, causes him to get unbalanced and fall. So the student, Frame, is suing the teacher for assault and battery. The court did side with the teacher, stating that his actions were justifiable in removing the student from the room. Reactive, I think it's going to be important to review instances like this as to whether it was acceptable to have physical removal or what other actions could have been done. I think it's important to remind the staff that it's a last resort for physical removal. Review district policies pertaining to discipline and removal from classes. Proactive, provide training to staff in handling situations where students are not complying, enforce the idea that physical removal is the last resort, and ensure teachers are establishing and enforcing expectations. And again, for ethics, whether it's intentional or unintentional, liability cases may arise, and they need to be aware of that. What are the consequences for their actions, and so forth. These are my references for the cases and for the reading. Thank you.